Jake Morrison sat at his desk in the United Nations Space Relations Office and stared at the message that had just arrived from the Galactic Council. The blue holographic display showed symbols that his computer slowly translated into English. Words. He read the message 3 times before he understood what it really meant. The message was polite but firm. The Galactic Council wanted humans to show more respect for alien customs during diplomatic meetings. Jake rubbed his temples and sighed. This was not the kind of problem he had expected when Earth joined the galactic community 2 years ago. The Council included 12 different alien species. The Zephyrians looked like tall, thin creatures made of silver light. They spoke in musical tones that sounded like wind chimes. The hive minds were insect-like beings that thought and moved as one group. They clicked and buzzed when they talked. There were also the crystalline builders who grew their cities instead of building them, and the aquatic depths who lived underwater and wore special suits to breathe air. Each species had their own way of doing things. Each had their own beliefs and ceremonies. The Council believed that humans were too rough and direct in their approach to other cultures. They wanted humans to participate in alien religious and ceremonial practices during diplomatic visits. Jake picked up his communication device and called Captain Lisa Rodriguez. She commanded the diplomatic vessel called the Endeavor. The ship was humanity's main tool for meeting with other species across the galaxy. "Lisa, we have a situation," Jake said when she answered. "The Council wants us to start participating in alien ceremonies, not just watching them." Lisa was quiet for a moment. She was a practical woman who had served in the Earth Space Navy before becoming a diplomat. "What kind of participation are we talking about?" she asked. Jake looked at the message again. "They want us to show cultural sensitivity by taking part in religious and ceremonial practices. They think it will prevent what they call our crude human tendencies from disrupting interspecies relations." "Crude tendencies?" Lisa's voice had an edge to it. "What crude tendencies?" Jake had been afraid she would ask that. "Well, remember the incident with the crystalline builders where we accidentally stepped on their sacred growing stones? And the time we offered the aquatic depths fish for dinner, not knowing they consider fish to be their cousins?" Lisa groaned. "Those were honest mistakes. We apologized." "I know, but the Council sees a pattern. They think we need to learn proper respect by doing things their way instead of just observing." The communication was quiet for several minutes. Jake could picture Lisa thinking through the implications. She was good at seeing problems before they became disasters. "Jake, do we have a choice in this?" she finally asked. "Not really. If we want to keep our membership in the Council and maintain trade relationships, we need to follow their cultural sensitivity guidelines." "Fine. What's our first assignment?" Jake scrolled through the rest of the message. "The sacred war rites of Vorthak on the planet Grimhold. You leave next week." "War rites?" Lisa asked. "That sounds intense." Jake read the description aloud. "The Vorthakian species honors their ancient war deity through ritual combat and ceremonial displays of strength. Diplomatic observers are expected to show appropriate reverence for these sacred traditions." "Great," Lisa said. "Combat rituals. What could go wrong?" After ending the call with Lisa, Jake spent the rest of the day researching the Vorthakians. They were a warrior species that looked like large reptiles covered in natural armor. They had sharp teeth, powerful claws, and stood about 8 feet tall. Their society was built around concepts of honor, strength, and courage in battle. The Vorthakians had been members of the Galactic Council for over 300 years. They were respected for their military expertise and often served as peacekeepers. when disputes arose between other species. Despite their fearsome appearance, they were known to be fair and honorable in their dealings. Their home planet Grimhold was mostly desert with large mountain ranges. The Vorthakians built their cities, inside mountains and underground. They preferred dark, cool spaces that reminded them of the caves where their ancestors had lived millions of years ago. The sacred war rites happened once every Earth year. Warriors from across Vorthakian space gathered to honor Krokthar, their ancient war god. The ceremonies included ritual combat between champions, displays of weapon skills, and competitions of strength and endurance. Jake learned that non-Vorthakians were rarely invited to observe these ceremonies. The fact that humans had been invited was considered a great honor. It was also a test. The Vorthakians wanted to see if humans could show proper respect for warrior traditions. The next morning, Jake met with Dr. Kevin Walsh, a xenoanthropologist who specialized in alien cultures. Kevin was a thin man with gray hair and thick glasses. He had spent years studying how different species interacted with each other. "Kevin, I need your help understanding what we're walking into," Jake said. They sat in a conference room overlooking the busy streets of New York City. Kevin pulled out a tablet and showed Jake several images of Vorthakian ceremonies. The Vorthakians take their warrior culture very seriously. These rites are not just entertainment, they're religious ceremonies that connect them to their ancestors and their god. "What exactly will our people be expected to do?" Jake asked. "According to my research, observers traditionally sit in designated areas and watch the ceremonies. They're expected to remain quiet and show respect through their attention and posture. Clapping or cheering is considered inappropriate because it breaks the sacred atmosphere." Jake nodded. "That doesn't sound too difficult." Kevin looked uncertain. "The challenge is that the Council's new directive says we should participate, not just observe. I'm not sure what that means in the context of warrior rights." "We'll figure it out," Jake said. "Lisa and her team are professionals. They can handle a few ceremonies. Dr. Kevin Walsh would be joining the mission to provide cultural guidance. Commander Beth Andrews, a military officer with experience in combat training, would also be part of the delegation. The team would include Marine Sergeant Tony Blake, Engineer Chloe Martinez, and Pilot Danny Foster." Jake spent the next week reviewing reports and preparing briefing materials. He wanted to make sure the team understood the importance of this mission. Success could improve humanity's standing in the galactic community. Failure could damage relationships that had taken years to build. The day before departure, Jake had one final conversation with Lisa. "Remember, the goal is to show respect and cultural sensitivity. Follow the Vorthakian lead and don't do anything that might be seen as disrespectful." "Understood," Lisa replied. "We'll be on our best behavior." Jake watched as the Endeavour launched. From Earth's orbital station, the ship disappeared into hyperspace, carrying the first human delegation to participate in alien religious ceremonies. He hoped he had prepared them well enough for whatever they would face on Grimhold. 3 days later, the Endeavour arrived at the Vorthakian homeworld. Jake received a brief message confirming their safe arrival. The real test was about to begin. The surface of Grimhold looked like a red desert under an orange sky. Captain Lisa Rodriguez stood at the observation deck of the Endeavour and watched as Vorthakian ships moved between the mountain peaks below. The ships were dark and angular, built for war but moving with surprising grace through the thin atmosphere. Dr. Kevin Walsh joined her at the window. He carried a datapad filled with notes about Vorthakian culture. "The landing coordinates they gave us are near the sacred peaks," he said. "That's where the main ceremonies take place." Lisa nodded. She had read his reports during the 3-day journey from Earth. The Vorthakians had built their most important religious sites inside the tallest mountains on their planet. The ceremonies took place in vast underground chambers carved from solid rock. Commander Beth Andrews approached them with the rest of the team. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and sharp eyes. Behind her walked Marine Sergeant Tony Blake, a muscular man who kept his equipment in perfect condition. Engineer Chloe Martinez carried a toolkit and several scanning devices. Pilot Danny Foster held a flight helmet under his arm. "The Vorthakians have cleared us for landing," Beth announced. "They're sending an escort to guide us to the ceremonial grounds." The escort turned out to be 3 Vorthakian warriors riding flying creatures that looked like a cross between dragons and pterodactyls. The creatures had leathery wings and long necks. Their riders wore ceremonial armor that gleamed in the orange sunlight. Danny Foster piloted the shuttle with careful precision, following the escort through narrow canyon passages and around towering rock formations. The Vorthakians led them to a landing platform carved into the side of a mountain. The platform was large enough for several ships and had been polished to a mirror shine. As the humans stepped off their shuttle, they got their first close look at Vorthakians. The warriors were even more impressive in person than in the photographs Kevin had shown them. They stood 8 feet tall and moved with fluid grace despite their size. Their natural armor consisted of overlapping scales that shifted color from dark green to deep blue. Their eyes were golden and seemed to glow in the dim light. The lead warrior stepped forward and spoke in a deep, rumbling voice. The translation device on Lisa's belt converted his words into English. "Welcome, humans of Earth. I am War Leader Grakoth. You have come to witness the sacred rites of Krokthar." Lisa bowed slightly, following the protocol Kevin had taught her. "We are honored by your invitation, War Leader Grakoth. We come to learn and to show respect for your traditions." Grakoth studied the humans for a moment. His golden eyes seemed to weigh and measure each of them. "The rites begin at sunset. You will observe from the gallery designated for off-world visitors. Elder Thraxmore will explain the significance of each ceremony." The humans were escorted through tunnels carved deep into the mountain. The walls were smooth and decorated with scenes of ancient battles. Crystals embedded in the ceiling provided a soft blue light that reminded Lisa of moonlight on Earth. They emerged into an enormous underground chamber. The space was so large that Lisa could barely see the ceiling in the dim light above. Thousands of Vorthakians filled stone benches arranged in circles around a central arena. The arena itself was a flat circle of polished black stone about the size of a football field. Elder Thrackmore was waiting for them in the visitor gallery. He was older than the warriors they had met, with gray markings on his scales and a more elaborate set of ceremonial armor. His voice was softer than Grakoth's, but carried clear authority. "Humans," he said through the translator. "You are the first off-world species to be invited to participate in our sacred rites. This is a great honor and a great responsibility." Kevin leaned forward. "Elder Thrackmore, could you clarify what participation means in this context? We want to show proper respect." The elder's eyes brightened. "Your species has requested to honor our customs as true guests, rather than mere observers. This means you will join us in the ceremonies as Krokthar's spirit moves you." Lisa felt a chill of concern. This was not what they had expected. "Could you explain what that involves?" "The rites include displays of skill, strength, and courage. Warriors demonstrate their worthiness through combat, agility trials, and tests of endurance. As honored guests, you may participate in any ceremony that calls to your warrior spirit. Beth. Andrews exchanged a worried look with Lisa. The briefings had not prepared them for active participation in warrior trials. The ceremonies began as the artificial lighting dimmed to simulate sunset. Drums echoed through the chamber with a rhythm that seemed to match the heartbeat of some enormous creature. Vorthakian warriors entered the arena wearing different styles of armor and carrying various weapons. The first ceremony was a display of individual combat skills. Warriors demonstrated techniques with swords, spears, and energy weapons. They moved through complex routines that were part martial arts and part dance. The precision and grace of their movements was breathtaking. Tony Blake watched with professional interest. As a Marine, he could appreciate the skill and training required for such displays. "Those are real combat techniques," he whispered to Beth. "Not just ceremony." The second ceremony involved teams of warriors working together to overcome obstacles. They climbed walls, crossed gaps, and solved tactical problems, while Elder Thrackmore explained the spiritual significance of each challenge. When the third ceremony began, something unexpected happened. It was a test of armor crafting and equipment design. Warriors presented armor and weapons they had made themselves, explaining the materials and techniques used in their construction. Chloe Martinez sat up straighter as she watched. As an engineer, she understood what she was seeing. The Vorthakians were not just showing off equipment. They were demonstrating their understanding of materials science, structural engineering, and manufacturing processes. "That armor design is incredibly efficient," she said quietly to the others. "Look how they've distributed the weight and allowed for joint movement." Elder Thrackmore overheard her comment through the translator. He turned to look at the humans with new interest. "The human engineer sees the craft in our work. Does your species also value the skill of making?" Before anyone could stop her, Chloe stood up. "Yes, Elder Thrackmore. We believe that good equipment can save lives in battle. May I examine some of these designs more closely?" The elder gestured for her to join him near the arena. Chloe walked down to where several Vorthakian warriors were displaying their creations. She began asking questions about materials and construction techniques. Her enthusiasm was obvious even through the translation system. The Vorthakian warriors were surprised but pleased by her interest. They began explaining their methods and showing her details of their work. When Chloe suggested a modification that could improve the flexibility of a joint without compromising protection, the warriors listened with growing respect. Meanwhile, the fourth ceremony had begun. This was a test of aerial agility using the flying creatures the humans had seen during their landing. Vorthakian riders performed complex maneuvers above the arena while the crowd watched in appreciation. Danny. Foster could not contain his excitement. As a pilot, he understood the skill required for such flying. When Elder Thrackmore asked if any humans wished to demonstrate their own abilities, Danny volunteered before anyone could stop him. The Vorthakians provided him with safety equipment and a calm flying creature to ride. Danny's experience with aircraft translated surprisingly well to riding the alien mount. Within minutes, he was performing basic maneuvers. Within an hour, he was attempting advanced techniques that impressed even the Vorthakian riders. The final ceremony of the evening was ritual combat between champions. Warriors faced each other in single combat using blunted weapons and protective gear. The matches were not meant to cause serious injury, but to demonstrate skill, courage, and honor. When Elder Thrackmore announced that honored guests could participate, if they wished, Tony Blake found himself standing up. "I would be honored to test my skills against Vorthakian warriors," he said. The chamber fell silent. No off-world species had ever requested to participate in ritual combat during the sacred rites. Elder Thrackmore looked surprised but pleased. "Very well, human warrior. Choose your weapon." Tony selected a sword similar to those used by the Vorthakians. The weapon was heavier than Earth weapons, but well-balanced. His opponent was a young Vorthakian warrior who looked confident, but respectful. The match began slowly as both fighters tested each other's skills. Tony quickly realized that his human speed and flexibility gave him advantages he had not expected. The Vorthakian was stronger and had longer reach, but Tony could move in ways that surprised his opponent. The crowd began to murmur as Tony not only held his own, but began to gain the upper hand. When he finally scored the winning touch, the chamber erupted in surprised appreciation. The Vorthakians had never seen a human fight before, and Tony's performance exceeded all their expectations. Elder Thrackmore stood up with his arms raised. "The humans have honored us with their participation. They show the spirit of true warriors." Lisa realized that what had started as a cultural observation mission had become something entirely different. Her team had not just watched the morning after the ceremonies brought changes that Captain Lisa Rodriguez had not expected. Instead of returning to their guest quarters as planned, the humans were escorted to the Chamber of Honors deep within the mountain. This was a sacred space where Elder Thrackmore conducted the most important religious ceremonies. The chamber was smaller than the arena, but far more impressive. The walls were covered in ancient carvings that told the history of the Vorthakian people. Crystals in the ceiling cast colored light that shifted and danced across the stone surfaces. In the center of the room stood an altar made from a single piece of black stone. Elder Thrackmore waited beside the altar wearing robes that Lisa had not seen before. These were not the ceremonial armor of the previous evening, but flowing garments, decorated with symbols that seemed to glow with their own light. Behind him stood war leader Grakoth and several other high-ranking Vorthakians. Dr. Kevin Walsh studied the symbols on the walls with obvious fascination. His translation device was working overtime as it tried to process the ancient Vorthakian text. "Captain," he whispered, "I think we're about to witness something unprecedented." Elder Thrackmore began to speak in a formal tone that made the importance of his words clear even before the translator processed them. "Humans of Earth, you came to our world as observers. You have proven yourselves to be something far greater." He gestured to Tony Blake, who had defeated 3 Vorthakian champions in the ritual combat. "Warrior Tony, your skills honor the tradition of single combat. You fought with courage and respect." Then he looked at Chloe Martinez, who had spent the entire morning working with Vorthakian engineers to improve their armor designs. "Engineer Chloe, your knowledge has made our equipment better. You understand that tools of war must be crafted with wisdom." Danny Foster received recognition for his flying abilities, which had impressed even the most experienced Vorthakian riders. Commander Beth Andrews was honored for her tactical understanding of the ceremonies. Dr. Kevin Walsh was praised for his deep respect for Vorthakian culture and history. "But this recognition is not the reason you have been brought here," Elder Thrackmore continued. "Something far more significant has occurred. During the sacred rites, the spirit of Krokthar, our war god, has spoken." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. The briefing materials had mentioned Krokthar, but only as a historical figure. The idea that the Vorthakians still believed their ancient god was active and aware had not been covered in their cultural preparation. For 3,000 years, Krokthar has slept in the realm beyond the stars, Elder Thrakmor explained. Only the greatest displays of warrior spirit can stir his attention. Last night, the god awakened. War leader Grakoth stepped forward. The signs were unmistakable. The ceremonial flames burned brighter when the humans participated. The drums echoed with harmonies we have not heard in centuries. The very stones of this mountain vibrated with divine approval. Lisa tried to process what she was hearing. Elder Thrakmor, are you saying that our participation in your ceremonies has religious significance? More than significance, Captain Lisa. It has divine meaning. Krokthar has chosen humanity as his new favored champions. This honor has never been granted to an off-world species. Kevin Walsh looked stunned. His years of studying alien cultures had not prepared him for becoming part of a religious experience. What does this mean for Earth and the human species? He asked. Elder Thrakmor smiled, which was an impressive sight given his rows of sharp teeth. It means that humans are no longer mere observers of Vorthakian warrior culture. You are participants in the great tradition that connects all true warriors across the galaxy. The ceremony that followed was unlike anything the humans had experienced. Elder Thrakmor performed rituals that involved chanting in ancient Vorthakian languages and burning substances that filled the chamber with strange but pleasant smells. Each human was given a medallion made from a metal that seemed to shift color in the light. These medallions mark you as champions of Krokthar, War Leader Grakoth explained. They will be recognized by any Vorthakian you encounter. More importantly, they mark you as worthy in the eyes of our god. Tony Blake held his medallion up to the light. I have to ask, what exactly does being a champion involve? You will understand when the time comes, Elder Thrakmor replied. Krokthar will make his will known. For now it is enough that you have been chosen. The formal ceremony concluded with a feast that lasted well into the afternoon. The humans found themselves seated at the high table with the most important Vorthakian leaders. The food was surprisingly good, though some of the dishes were made from animals that Earth had never seen. During the meal, Lisa had a chance to speak privately with Elder Thrakmor. I need to understand what this means for human-Vorthakian relations, she said. My government will want to know how this affects our diplomatic status. Elder Thrakmor considered her question carefully. Your species has gained great honor among the Vorthakians. We will support human interests in the Galactic Council. We will share military knowledge and defensive technologies. Most importantly, we will consider any attack on human worlds to be an attack on our own. This was far beyond what Lisa had hoped to achieve with a simple cultural observation mission. That's very generous, Elder Thrakmor. What do you expect from humanity in return? Nothing more than what you have already shown us. Respect for warrior traditions. Willingness to test yourselves against challenges. The courage to participate rather than merely observe. As the feast continued, War Leader Grakoth shared stories of ancient Vorthakian battles and the role that Krokthar had played in their history. Our God does not seek worship through prayer and offerings, he explained. Krokthar values action, courage, and the willingness to fight for what is right. Chloe Martinez asked about the technical aspects of Vorthakian military equipment. She learned that their weapons and armor were not just functional, but were considered forms of artistic expression. Each piece was custom-made by the warrior who would use it. Danny Foster discussed flying techniques with Vorthakian pilots. He discovered that their aerial combat methods had been developed over thousands of years and incorporated both technology and natural flying ability. Dr. Kevin Walsh spent most of the meal asking questions about Vorthakian history and religion. He was particularly interested in how their beliefs had evolved as they became part of the galactic community. As evening approached, Elder Thrakmor made another announcement that surprised everyone. Krokthar has made his intentions known to me through meditation and prayer. The god wishes to visit human space to observe your warrior culture directly. Lisa nearly choked on her drink. Visit human space? You mean Krokthar wants to come to Earth? Yes, but not immediately. First, he must complete the awakening process. A god who has slept for 3,000 years cannot simply step into the physical realm without preparation. The process will take several months. War leader Grakoth added, when Krokthar is ready, he will manifest in physical form and travel to observe the greatest gathering of human warriors. We have been studying your species and believe we have identified the appropriate location. Kevin Walsh looked worried. What gathering are you referring to? Elder Thrakmor consulted a data tablet that had been provided by the Vorthakian research team. Your databases indicate that the largest assembly of human warriors occurs annually at an event called Comic-Con in the city of San Diego. Thousands of your finest warriors gather there to display their equipment and honor legendary battles. Lisa felt her heart sink as she realized what was happening. The Vorthakian translation systems had misinterpreted the nature of Comic-Con completely. They thought it was a military gathering instead of an entertainment convention. Elder Thrakmor, she began carefully. I think there might be some confusion about Comic-Con. But the elder was already continuing with his explanation. The evidence is clear from your own records. Human warriors gather wearing armor and carrying weapons. They compete for honors and recognition. They celebrate the deeds of legendary champions. It is obviously your most important warrior festival. Kevin tried to help. Actually, Comic-Con is more about entertainment and storytelling than actual warfare. War leader Grakoth looked confused. Your data shows warriors in elaborate armor discussing battle strategies and displaying weapons. How is this not a warrior gathering? Lisa realized that explaining the concept of cosplay and fantasy entertainment to a species that viewed everything through the lens of warrior culture was going to be nearly impossible. We'll need to provide more context when Krokthar visits, she said weakly. Elder Thrakmor seemed satisfied with the plan. Krokthar will manifest at Comic-Con and observe human warrior culture at its finest. This will be a momentous occasion for both our species. The humans exchanged worried glances. They had come to Grimhold to observe alien ceremonies and had somehow committed their species to hosting a war god at the world's largest comic book convention. As they prepared to leave Grimhold the next morning, Elder Thrakmor provided them with detailed information about Krokthar's upcoming visit. The god will require no special accommodations, he assured them. He will appear in whatever form is most appropriate for the occasion. 3 months after the Endeavor returned from Grimhold, Jake Morrison thought the Vorthakian situation had settled into routine diplomatic exchanges. The enhanced trade agreements were proceeding smoothly, and the Galactic Council had praised humanity's successful cultural integration. Then Admiral Nick Parker called with news that changed everything. Jake, we have a problem, Admiral Parker said from his office at Space Command headquarters. A massive Vorthakian battleship just appeared in Earth orbit. They're requesting permission to land what they're calling a divine delegation. Jake felt his stomach drop. He had been dreading this moment since Lisa's team returned with their report about Krokthar's planned visit. How massive are we talking about? 3 miles long and bristling with enough firepower to glass a continent. It's not making any threatening moves, but it's definitely gotten everyone's attention. Jake grabbed his emergency protocols folder and headed for the door. I'm on my way. Whatever you do, don't let anyone make any sudden movements around that ship. The Situation Room at Space Command was buzzing with activity when Jake arrived. Military personnel monitored communications while diplomats tried to figure out the proper protocol for receiving an alien war god. Admiral Parker stood at the central display showing the Vorthakian vessel floating serenely above Earth. They've been completely peaceful, Admiral Parker reported. Elder Thrackmore sent a message saying that Krokthar has completed his awakening and is ready to observe human warrior culture. They want to know where to land for Comic-Con. Dr. Kevin Walsh was already there, looking pale and holding a thick file of research notes. I've been studying Vorthakian theology since we got back, he said. The good news is that Krokthar is considered a benevolent deity. The bad news is that he has very specific expectations about warrior behavior. Jake rubbed his temples. Explain. The bad news first. Krokthar judges species based on their approach to conflict and challenge. If he finds humanity lacking in warrior spirit, the consequences could be severe. Not just for our relationship with the Vorthakians, but potentially for our standing in the entire galactic community. Admiral Parker looked skeptical. Are we seriously worried about offending an alien god? Kevin nodded grimly. The Vorthakians have been part of the galactic community for centuries. Their religious beliefs are respected by other species, even if they don't share them. If Krokthar declares humanity unworthy, it could damage our reputation beyond repair. Meanwhile, in San Diego, Amy Stewart was having the worst day of her career as event coordinator for Comic-Con International. She had received a call from the federal government informing her that aliens wanted to attend the convention because they believed it was a gathering of warriors. Amy sat in her office surrounded by stacks of registration forms, vendor applications, and security plans. None of her training had prepared her for extraterrestrial visitors who might not understand the difference between cosplay and actual combat. Let me get this straight, she said to the government liaison on the phone. Alien warriors think Comic-Con is a military gathering, and their god wants to attend to judge whether humans are worthy warriors? That's essentially correct, the voice on the phone replied. We need you to coordinate with federal security agencies to ensure the visit goes smoothly. Amy looked out her window at the San Diego Convention Center, where thousands of volunteers were already setting up exhibits for the upcoming convention. Do the aliens understand that people will be dressed as fictional characters? That the weapons are props? That the whole thing is entertainment? We're working on that explanation, but their translation system seemed to have trouble with the concept of fictional warriors. They keep interpreting cosplay as ceremonial armor worn by actual combat veterans. After ending the call, Amy immediately contacted Mike Chen, the convention's senior organizer. Mike had been managing Comic-Con events for over 15 years and had dealt with every kind of crisis, from fire alarms to celebrity meltdowns. Alien gods were a new category of problem. Mike, I need you to sit down, Amy said when he arrived. At her office. That bad? Mike asked, settling into a chair. We're about to host the first intergalactic cultural exchange in human history, and it's happening at Comic-Con. Mike listened with growing amazement as Amy explained the situation. When she finished, he was quiet for several minutes. So you're telling me that alien warriors think our convention is their kind of warrior gathering, and their god is coming to check us out? He finally said. That's exactly what I'm telling you. Mike started to laugh. You know what? This is either going to be the best Comic-Con ever or the last Comic-Con ever. Back in orbit, Elder Thrackmore was making final preparations for Krokthar's manifestation. The process required precise timing and enormous amounts of energy. The battleship's power systems had been reconfigured specifically for this purpose. War Leader. Grakoth oversaw the technical aspects, while Elder Thrackmore handled the religious components. They had spent weeks studying human cultural databases to understand the significance of Comic-Con in human warrior society. The humans gather in groups called panels to discuss battle strategies, Grakoth reported. They display rare weapons and armor in areas called dealer halls. They compete for honors in contests judged by their peers. Elder Thrackmore nodded approvingly. It matches the pattern of our own warrior gatherings. Krokthar will find much to appreciate in human customs. Neither of them understood that the battle strategies being discussed were analyses of fictional stories, that the weapons were replicas made of plastic and foam, or that the competitions were based on craftsmanship and performance rather than combat effectiveness. Dr. Kevin Walsh had been trying to explain these concepts during several video conferences with the Vorthakians, but the cultural gap proved too wide to bridge quickly. Elder Thrackmore, Kevin said during their latest call, I want to make sure you understand that Comic-Con participants are not actual warriors. They're fans of stories about warriors. Elder Thrackmore looked puzzled. But they wear armor and carry weapons. They study combat techniques and honor legendary champions. How are they not warriors? The armor is costume. The weapons are props. The combat techniques they study are from movies and books. Ah, Elder Thrackmore said with understanding. They are warrior scholars who preserve the knowledge of ancient battles through stories and recreations. This is even more impressive than we initially thought. Kevin realized that his explanation had made the situation worse instead of better. The Vorthakians now believed that Comic-Con was an even more sophisticated warrior tradition than they had originally understood. Meanwhile, the convention center was buzzing with preparations. Vendors were setting up booths selling everything. From vintage comics to elaborate costumes, artists were arranging displays of their latest work. Cosplayers were making final adjustments to armor and weapons that had taken months to create. Greg Williams was putting the finishing touches on his Captain America costume. He had spent over a year crafting every detail to be as accurate as possible. The shield was made from lightweight aluminum with a hand-painted finish that matched the movie version perfectly. Ashley Moore was making final adjustments to her Wonder Woman costume. Her armor was crafted from flexible plastic that looked like metal, but was comfortable enough to wear for long periods. Her sword and shield were made from high-density foam that looked realistic, but was completely safe. Neither of them had any idea that their costumes were about to be examined by an alien war god who would interpret them as actual combat equipment worn by human warriors. Artist Rachel Stone was setting up her booth in the main exhibition hall. Her specialty was detailed paintings of fantasy warriors and science fiction battles. She had no way of knowing that an alien deity would soon be asking her to explain the strategic significance of her fictional combat scenes. Vendor Carlos Rodriguez was arranging his collection of rare action figures and replica weapons. His booth featured items from dozens of science fiction and fantasy franchises. He assumed his biggest challenge would be managing the crowds of collectors who wanted to examine his merchandise. Back at Space Command, Jake Morrison was coordinating with Amy Stewart to establish security protocols for the alien visitation. The Secret Service, FBI, and military security were all involved in planning for an event that had no precedent in human history. The aliens have agreed to limit their delegation to essential personnel, Jake reported during a planning meeting. Elder Thrakmor, War Leader Grakoth, and 3 cultural observers will accompany Krokthar. Admiral Parker studied the security requirements. What about Krokthar himself? Do we know what to expect? Kevin Walsh consulted his notes. According to Vorthakian theology, Krokthar can manifest in any form he chooses. He might appear as a Vorthakian, as a human, or as something entirely different. The only constant is that he'll be recognizable as a divine being. Amy Stewart raised her hand from the conference phone. I hate to ask this, but does their God understand that humans don't actually worship warriors? That our entertainment is separate from our religion? That's another concept that doesn't translate well, Kevin admitted. The Vorthakians don't separate warrior culture from religious practice. 2. The morning of Comic-Con's opening day brought clear skies and warm weather to San Diego. Outside the convention center, thousands of fans lined up wearing elaborate costumes and carrying prop weapons. Inside, Amy Stewart paced nervously while checking her communication device every few minutes. At exactly 10 in the morning, the air above the convention center began to shimmer. A column of silver light descended from the sky and touched down in the main plaza. When the light faded, 5 figures stood where empty space had been moments before. Elder Thrakmor and War Leader Grakoth looked impressive in their ceremonial armor. The 3 cultural observers carried recording devices and translation equipment, but all eyes were drawn to the figure standing at the center of the group. Krokthar stood 12 feet tall and appeared to be made of pure energy contained, within ceremonial Vorthakian armor that seemed to be forged from starlight itself. His face was visible through the helmet as a shifting pattern of silver and gold light. When he moved, small sparks of electricity danced around his form. "Greetings, warriors of Earth," Krokthar said, in a voice that resonated like distant thunder. "I have come to observe your greatest gathering." Amy Stewart approached the group with a security escort and a diplomatic translator. "Welcome to Comic-Con International," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "We're honored by your presence." Krokthar looked around at the costumed crowd streaming into the convention center. His glowing eyes took in every detail from elaborate armor to detailed weapons. "Magnificent," he said. "Your warriors display their heritage with pride." Mike Chen joined Amy as they led the alien delegation into the main exhibition hall. The first thing Krokthar saw was Greg Williams standing near the entrance in his Captain America costume. The shield gleamed under the convention center lights, and every detail of the uniform was perfect. Krokthar approached Greg with obvious interest. "Warrior, your armor bears symbols of great significance. Tell me of the battles you have fought." Greg looked stunned. He had expected to take photos with the alien visitors, not to be interviewed by what appeared to be a god. I haven't actually fought any battles," he said. "This is a costume from a comic book character named Captain America." Elder Thrakmor stepped forward to clarify. "He honors the legendary champion Captain America through ceremonial dress. This is how human warriors preserve the memory of great heroes." Krokthar nodded approvingly and placed a glowing hand on Greg's shoulder. "You honor the warrior's path by keeping alive the stories of champions. You have my blessing, keeper of legends." Greg felt a warm, tingling sensation where Krokthar touched him. The convention badge on his chest began to glow with a faint silver light. "Thank you," he managed to say, though he wasn't entirely sure what had just happened. Ashley Moore approached the group wearing her Wonder Woman costume. Krokthar examined her armor and weapons with the careful attention of a military expert. "Your equipment shows excellent craftsmanship," he said. "The balance of protection and mobility is impressive." "Thank you," Ashley replied. "I spent 6 months making it as accurate as possible to the character from the comics and movies." Krokthar looked confused. "Character? You are not the warrior Wonder Woman?" Dr. Kevin Walsh, who had arrived with the morning security briefing, tried to explain. "Wonder Woman is a fictional character. Ashley is portraying her through costume and performance." "Ah," Krokthar said with growing understanding. "She takes on the spirit of the legendary warrior through ritual transformation. This is sophisticated magic indeed." Before Kevin could correct this interpretation, Krokthar had blessed Ashley as well. Her costume began to glow with the same silver light as Greg's, and she felt a surge of confidence and strength. The delegation moved deeper into the convention center. In the main exhibition hall, Krokthar encountered Rachel Stone's art booth. Her paintings depicted detailed battle scenes from various fantasy and science fiction universes. Warriors in elaborate armor fought dragons, aliens, and mythical creatures. "These are magnificent tactical studies," Krokthar said as he examined her work. "You have captured the essence of combat across many different scenarios." Rachel was initially nervous about explaining her art to an alien god, but Krokthar's genuine interest put her at ease. "These are scenes from different fictional universes," she said. "I try to make them as realistic as possible, even though the stories are imaginary." Krokthar studied a painting of a space marine fighting alien monsters. The positioning of the warrior shows deep understanding of battlefield tactics. The use of cover and supporting fire is excellent. "Have you studied military strategy?" "Not formally," Rachel admitted. "But I research combat techniques to make my art more believable." "You are a warrior scholar," Krokthar declared. "Your studies of combat through art serve to educate others in the ways of war. This is valuable work." He blessed Rachel's painting, and the artwork began to shimmer with divine energy. Visitors to her booth would later comment that the battle scenes seemed almost alive, as if the painted warriors might step out of their frames at any moment. At day, Carlos Rodriguez's vendor booth, Krokthar, encountered an extensive collection of replica weapons and action figures. Carlos had spent years collecting items from science fiction movies, fantasy games, and comic book adaptations. "These are the weapons of legendary warriors," Krokthar observed as he examined a replica lightsaber. "You preserve their tools for future generations to study." Carlos was thrilled to have such an interested customer, even if that customer happened to be an alien deity. "This one is from Star Wars," he explained. "It's an exact replica of the prop used in the movies." Krokthar activated the lightsaber, and to everyone's surprise, it actually worked. The blade extended with the familiar humming sound, but now it glowed with real energy instead of just LED lights. "An excellent weapon," Krokthar said approvingly. "Elegant and efficient." Carlos stared in amazement as his replica lightsaber became a functional energy sword. "How did you do that?" "All weapons have the potential for greatness," Krokthar replied. "They need only the proper blessing to achieve their true form." Word spread quickly through the convention that the alien god was blessing costumes and making prop weapons functional. Lines began forming at every booth Krokthar visited. Cosplayers who had spent months perfecting their outfits found their costumes enhanced with divine energy. Vendors discovered that their replica weapons had become genuine artifacts. In the main auditorium, Krokthar attended a panel discussion about combat tactics in science fiction movies. The panelists were film experts and military consultants who analyzed the realism of battle scenes in popular entertainment. The shield wall formation used in the Battle of Helm's Deep shows excellent defensive positioning, one panelist was saying. The filmmakers clearly researched historical combat techniques. Krokthar listened with growing enthusiasm. These humans study warfare through their entertainment, he said to Elder Thrakmor. They analyze tactics, evaluate equipment, and debate strategy. This is the most sophisticated warrior culture I have ever encountered. During the question and answer period, Krokthar stood up to address the panel. I am impressed by your analysis of combat techniques across multiple fictional universes. Your dedication to understanding warfare in all its forms shows true warrior spirit. The panelists were initially speechless at being praised by an actual alien war god. Then they began, asking Krokthar questions about real combat tactics used by alien species. The discussion that followed was the most popular panel in Comic-Con history. As the day progressed, Krokthar visited the cosplay contest, the artist alley, and several more panel discussions. He blessed hundreds of attendees and enhanced countless props and costumes. Each person he touched felt a surge of confidence and creativity that would stay with them long after the convention ended. In the cosplay contest, Krokthar served as a guest judge. The contestants presented elaborate costumes representing characters from across science fiction and fantasy. When the judging was complete, Krokthar was declared the winner for his own appearance as himself. I did not realize this was a competition, he said as he accepted the first-place trophy. I am honored to be recognized by such skilled artisans. The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Someone started chanting, "War God, War God," and soon the entire auditorium had joined in. Elder Thrakmor watched the proceedings with satisfaction. The humans have exceeded all our expectations, he told war leader Grakoth. Their approach to warrior culture is both sophisticated and joyful. As evening approached, Krokthar addressed the entire convention from the main stage. People of Earth, he began, his voice carrying to every corner of the convention center. I came here expecting to find warriors. Instead, I have found something far more valuable. The crowd fell silent, hanging on every word. You have created a culture that celebrates heroism without requiring bloodshed. You honor warriors through art, story, and performance rather than conquest. You study combat to understand courage, not to cause suffering. This is the highest form of warrior wisdom. The applause was thunderous. Krokthar raised his hands for silence. I declare Comic-Con to be the finest warrior celebration in the galaxy.